Alrighty. Hello, everybody. This is episode 27 of Shoot the Breeze and the last interview of this year, as well as a chill interview all around for you and me. I am your host, Heavy Divider. Alongside me is a very humbling individual. As a matter of fact, I have a lot of respect for this individual just because, well, I've got a chance to know him for quite some time on hand, as well as basically for all the different adventures, being on my side or their side. We always cross paths no matter what and share wisdom no matter what on hand, as well as they are very unique on hand for what they do. My guest for tonight is JeffyBed, but we call him Jeffy for short. Welcome, Jeffy.
Hi.
Hi.
I was looking at something.
Nah, you're good. You're all good for the most part. So, we'll go ahead and get started right away with the first question on hand. How the hell did we meet?
That is a pretty good question. I think it's been almost 2.5 years, and you were friends with one of my friends, Phoenix Prime.
Mm-hmm.
I started hanging out with him back in around August of 2018.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe you were hanging out with him in that period of time. Back when you had the Iron Man get up with
Yep, mustache,
top
glasses,
hat and mustache.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I do.
I see you still have it now.
Well,
Although with a little few differences.
Yep, a little bit of human differences on hand for the most part. To kind of dive into it on hand, we actually
That's
bumped. To kind of dive in on hand for the most part, we bumped into each other a few times, but we never got a chance to talk. The only time we ever had great interaction on hand is through Arnie. And funny enough, I remember on hand where basically I went to go visit Arnie, and then you were there too. And I think it was besides that, as well as that MMD world or so, you were. I got a chance to interact with you on hand as well. So, yeah, it's been a long time, trust me. But I kind of remember small details of that on hand when we were doing.
That's good, because that's the thing. A lot of those groups back then were intermingled.
Mm-hmm.
So there was a lot of overlap.
In weird ways.
Things have changed a bit
Yeah, things
in
have
that regard.
Things have changed a bit, but if you think about it, sometimes this is how it works when it comes to like friend groups. They may split apart, but somehow they intertwine back together in weird ways, or so something brings them back together for certain aspects on hand.
In different configurations.
Very, very good configurations on hand. So, let me ask you about your VRChat origins. What got you into VRChat in general, or what kind of like inspired you to kind of like, you know what, I want to try this game out, or and so on and so forth, will let you to full body and everything?
I remember faintly back when I first got my VR headset back in 2016, hearing about VR World. That was kind of like Ready Player One, the book, because I don't think the movie was out yet by that point.
Mm-hmm.
And I was looking at it, and this was like pre-alpha, where avatars were stored locally and shit. And I remember downloading it, trying it once, and going, oh my god, that's unusable. And I couldn't really figure out how it worked. So I just pushed it aside and got on with my life. And fast forward 2 years, and in January of 2018, I started hearing about it again. And with all the, the knuckles and shit, and all the dreamers doing comedy skits, that really made me laugh. And it's funny because at that point I was already a big fan of VR. And seeing this now in an actual usable state really pushed me to try it. So I was one of the few people who already had VR before VRChat. Because I have a feeling a lot of people started up in desktop and eventually upgraded once they saw how cool this was. I was already in VR the first time I logged in here. And I only been in desktop a few times. One time because my headset broke, and the other was because I was working on a 3D model at the same time and I wanted to hang out with someone. That's about it. It's not the same game without VR, I feel like.
Yeah, it's kind of like half of the
yeah.
experience. Half the experience on hand. like desktop wise, you can kind of get the features on hand for it for the most part, but when it comes to like having VR in general, it's just kind of like you get like a full experience. Like you can at least see everything, be able to interact with everything on a different, level.
Although it's good, I know people like to make the joke, it's VRChat, not desktop chat. But the thing is, the reason this is so popular is because of the desktop users. It's no wonder Oculus and Vive and all the big companies invested in VRChat, because this is an incredible headset seller. You get in desktop, you have all your friends in VR having the time of their lives, and you're wondering, shit, I want to get into that shit. And next thing you know, you start as a desktop user, and then full body tracking, and you're sleeping in VR and shit. Although I've never done that. I have trouble falling asleep normally. Having all that shit on my head would just make it even worse.
I can't even sleep in VR just because, like, when this thing heats up on hand or so, it makes it even harder to be able to, like, even try to sleep for the most part. Let alone if you have like glasses underneath it or so, it's just kind of like a stretch your nose and everything, well, the bridge of it. So it's like, yeah.
I mean, it wasn't an issue with my Rift S, but it's a bit of an issue with the index. It's weighted differently, so it pushed a bit more pressure on the front of my face. But I think I might still have to figure out the fit, actually.
I'm pretty sure it'll come to you in time for it.
Also, a quick question. How's my sound volume? Is it good?
Yeah, your sound volume sounds good on hand. Yeah, it sounds good on hand.
Good, because it's a bit tough to gauge. Ever since I switched to the built-in microphone for the index.
Okay.
Because I was using a mod mic beforehand. Because the microphone on the Rift S is pure garbage. And it was a bit sensitive, so I was a bit loud with it. So I always want to make sure that I don't annoy people. I know my voice is already something to consider. So I don't want it to be loud as well.
No, you're good. Like, I could tell you're on hand, especially from looking over here on my other monitor. Yeah, your volume's fine on hand. Plus, I put suppressors on it because that way it doesn't go over a certain amount. So literally, you're not loud to me on VR-wise or so, and you're definitely not going to be loud for everybody else.
Okay, no, that's good.
Yeah,
I had the feeling you had those kind of limits on the audio. I just wanted to make sure that I was not blowing your ears out.
Nah, you're good. You're good. Trust me, before I ever did anything on hand, I make sure to double check those just in case for anything else on hand. So, let me ask you about your hobbies on hand besides this game in general. Now, I put a few examples down being like Final Fantasy XIV, Blade and Soul. I know you play like Dead by Daylight, but I know past that or so on hand, you have also other unique talents on hand. Mostly a little bit of arts and crafts on hand. Would you like to share a little?
I dabble in a lot of things. As we can say, jack of all trades, master of none. So, I like to do some art. I also like to do some basic 3D modeling. But what I'm better at in the 3D space is assembling models and texturing things. I've been using Photoshop for more than 20 years now. It's pretty much second nature to me. So it's good to get existing assets and then using my basic knowledge of 3D modeling to change them, and then use my Photoshop knowledge to retexture things as needed. So it's all by things going into one thing, because I like VRChat. I also like VTubing and 3D modeling, artwork, Photoshop. All feeds into it because I get to make these models and dress them up as I want.
Yep.
Exactly as I want. So I can start with something like a turtleneck like this and turn it into a tank top because I like the texture of it, and then work off the existing texture afterwards. It's a fun hobby, I think, and something, if I ever decide to do this kind of thing full time, something I might offer as a service to others. So I can keep a roof over my head.
Well, you definitely do a good job on hand for the most part, especially with, like, just be able to have, like, your own wardrobe on hand for what you want to do, as well as just, like, in an interesting way or so. It's also a really good jack of all trades to be able to have, especially when being a VTuber in general, because that way you can fit the theme of what you want on hand. no matter what season, no
Yeah.
matter what day, no matter what event on hand, like, you pretty much got that all the way down.
Also, it's a bit more realistic, as in it makes me seem like more of a real streamer because I have a rotating wardrobe.
Yeah, it does.
So that's something I can use in this regard. Which is why I like having the 3D option. I know there's the biggest craze right now in VTubers is 2D. But the thing with 2D models is that unless you're planning on buying the clothing yourself and rigging it yourself, you're looking at spending a fortune in rigging and artwork costs. So that's been my worry. I know some people don't mind having the same outfit all the time, but since I am a big fan of fashion, that would not work for me. But I have nothing against people who don't do it this way. Because at the end of the day, it's a free world. We are free to do as we want.
Pretty much.
And I have nothing against people who do things differently than me. That's not my jam.
Yeah.
We all have different things we like to do. And that's okay too.
Yeah. Definitely okay on hand. And plus, not only that, everybody's going to have their own different style on hand. Not everybody's going to have the exact same kind of thing on hand, for the most part. It's just a matter of, like, finding out what fits you, most importantly. So.
Exactly. Exactly.
So, I mentioned about the whole VTubing scene on hand or so. I will say, from your perspective, from where you are, because let me put it this way: when you first started, like, on your side or so, streaming wise or so, you were already, even if you weren't a VTuber at that time, you were already set for that at that time. Like, you had everything set up, ready to go.
I mean, I was a VTuber day one.
Yeah, day one.
It's like, if you look at my highlights of July 2018 on my YouTube, you see me playing Dead by Daylight with my avatar in the corner. It was a very scuffed setup, but I made it work. Alright, so the first thing I did back in the day is, when I wasn't too sure how to do it, I had my headset on in VRChat on my second PC, and I was playing the game on the main one and using the capture card to feed it so I could see what I was doing. It worked, but holy shit was it clunky. And then afterwards I upgraded my setup by putting everything on the gaming itself on the stronger PC and moving VRChat to my less powerful PC. And then using capture card to feed the footage so I did not get the game slowdowns, which was a big problem with my initial setup because it was running both VRChat and VR and the full other 3D game. So my graphics card and processor were noping the fuck out. So these streams were scuffed. And then afterwards, I decided, okay, no, let's not do this in VR. Let's just use my desktop, but use VRChat as a capture method. So I had my headset on top of my forehead, and I had my controllers on each side of my desktop. And whenever I wanted to talk with my hands, I would pick up the controllers and put them back down because they did not see me shoulder down. So I did not have to always hold them while playing the games. But that was even worse because it looked a bit better on stream. But having the headset on top of my head that way really hurt my neck. And I had to go get physical therapy for it at some point. So, lesson learned. But yeah, back in 2018, we did not have as many tools to do VTubing as we do now. So we had to improvise. And I think I did okay with the tools I had. But if I would do it differently today, I would probably look into other alternatives before I would do things that way. Because I heard after the fact that there was some Japanese software I could have probably used if I had a way to translate the instructions. Because that's what some of the VTubers back then were using. Oh well.
Oh well.
Live and learn,
Yeah,
as we say.
Yeah, live and learn. Not only that or so, like, even back then or so, the options are now, like, you got more options on it. You got Suva, you got Vuppet, you also got, like, VC Face. You got plenty of options on hand now.
Yep.
To not, like, restrain your neck and everything.
There's a ton of options. So you're left to have better options, whatever your budget may be. And that's good. And that also explains the explosion of VTubing in 2019 and 2020. Because I remember back in the day, there was like a handful of us. And now fast forward 2 years, 2.5 years. And now there's a lot of us.
Yep.
Which is awesome. Because it's a fun thing to do. And I always say the more the merrier. Because I know some people will say that some people say, oh no, there's too many people. That will make it harder to stand out. But not necessarily. At the end of the day, your content speaks for itself. Be it VTuber or meat space streamers, as I like to call them sometimes. Because at the end of the day, you make a performance and people show up for it. Or they don't. And it's all a matter of persistence, hard work, good marketing, and persistence again, because giving up is the only way you lose at this content creation thing. Because you never know when the next stream will be the big one.
Yeah. It's also a matter of patience, too, especially when you got a lot of things on hand entirely on, you know, it's like putting too many irons in the fire, but you're hoping, like, one of them will definitely strike red hot for the most part. You just got to be patient with it. Let it take time to basically glow and all that. That's the thing with, like, anything.
The thing is having as many spinning plates as possible. You never know which plate it will be. So you have to keep trying.
Yep.
But you've been at this for almost as long as I have. You started streaming in 2018, did you not?
2018 of March 12th.
Yeah, so you started before me. So you've been at this longer than I have. And you're still at it. Which means you're in it for the long haul, which is perfect. Because that's where results actually lie. Because, I mean, everybody wants to explode at some point into a lot of popularity quickly.
Yeah.
But the thing about fast growth is that it can also lead to fast contraction.
Yeah.
Because what goes up fast also goes down quickly.
Yeah.
What builds up slowly maintains momentum.
Yeah, it's kind of like an old. It's like a saying I once told. It's basically it's best to build a sturdy staircase than a flimsy rocket, especially for whatever you got to go to.
Yeah, because with the staircase, you can go down it afterwards when you're done.
Yep.
With a rocket, once you're in space, you're stuck up there.
Yeah, nowhere to go.
And then you just get lost.
And it's a long fall all the way down too, especially how far you go. So.
Yeah, as we like to say, gravity is a bitch.
Yeah, gravity is.
But it's the law.
Definitely it's a law too. Funny enough, it's actually, I will say too, it's kind of like, I remember a quote that basically Les Brown once said, where basically, you know, whatever your goal and dream is, it's basically Murphy's Law. It's a telegram to Murphy's Law to come towards you to basically test to see, are you sure you want this? Because, as you know, gravity's going to push you back no matter what to test and see your resolve on if you want this. Because
Murphy's Law. That's always something that I always come back to. Because, I mean, if I'm not mistaken, Murphy's Law is if things can get worse, they will.
It definitely will.
So, and somehow in a way you did not predict. That's what's so funny about Murphy's Law.
Yeah. I think it's just
unpredictable.
It's unpredictable, but at the same time too, it's a matter of like resolve and adapting. Whatever gets thrown your way, you find a way to basically get around it by just basically staying strong with what your belief is and adapting to whatever surrounding it is. Because after you adapt to that surrounding, you bring.
That's also the thing. Adapting is important. Because some people need hardship, and they just keep doing the exact same thing they were doing, and then nothing happens. So, the trick is to be able to adapt and adjust course, to work around the problems that arise. That's how you get ahead in anything in life.
Yeah.
It's to be able to see where you are, where you want to be, and taking the necessary steps to get as close as possible.
and that's what it comes down to on hand. That's what it comes down to for the most part.
And it's never a guarantee.
Never
You can
guarantee.
always try.
Mhm.
And it's always the people that say that they have guaranteed chances of success that always end up hurting the most when they fall on their asses.
Mhm.
Because anything in life is built on failure. You don't fail, you don't learn.
That is true.
And people who succeed in life often at a young age without failing, when they get older and actually start to meet resistance, they are not equipped to deal with it. So that was a problem I had when I was younger. I was a pretty smart kid when I grew up, though. I was basically falling asleep in my classes. And I was having, the equivalent of straight A's, I would imagine. Good grades. And then once I got to college, where things actually get difficult, and started hitting my face against the wall, I was not ready for it.
Yeah.
And with time, I learned how to deal with it. And I think more people should learn to deal with failure and losing, because the luckiest person in the world will always fail at least a few times.
Yeah.
It's part of life.
And the step about failure is this, and I need to stress this enough, is when you fail, that means you're one step closer to succeeding. Because
Yes.
because basically it's a build up on hand. You understand why you fail, but you're able to take whatever it is that fell out of it, strengthen it, go again, and basically you're one step closer again and again and again. It takes time on hand, but as long as you keep strengthening, learning, adapting, you're going to get one step closer, no matter what.
Failure is finding out what does not work. And that is invaluable information.
Very valuable information.
Something you can use.
I know.
Yeah.
Something anybody in the
And
world can use.
Also, here's the thing. This is not my first foray into streaming. I've been doing different types of projects on Twitch and Justin.tv since 2010. This is just my latest project. So it took a while to get here.
The fact you
Although all my other projects were on the French side of Twitch and Justin.tv.
The fact you mentioned Justin.tv is like a trip back, because I remember just being a viewer for a lot of different streamers back in like 2009, 2010. Before I even thought about, before I even thought about streaming, I used to stream like before March 28th. I streamed 6 years ago. I tried to, failed, and then pick myself up until later on, like 2018.
Yeah, but here's the thing. Back in that time, streaming was much more difficult, because having gear like capture cards or PC set up for streaming, good microphone and stuff were harder to come by. But if you stuck at it back then, and you had a professional enough looking setup, you had more chances of success. Because there were much less people streaming back then.
Yeah.
So it's always funny thinking about if you just stick with it, what would have happened. But those scenarios are a waste of time.
Yeah.
You can't go back in time. This is not Back to the Future or Steins Gate. You can't go back and fix something. You only have to look forward. But still, I just wanted to illustrate that it's a process that sometimes people are not aware the length of.
Yeah. Very much so.
And some people will be doing that their whole lives and will not have success. But they still try because they have a chance at it as long as they try. Even if they never get it. It's like I say, I prefer to give it my all and break my face than give up and wonder what could have been. That part would probably eat me up more than the failure itself.
That's true. That's very true on hand. And speaking of back when you were young and everything, I want to talk about arts and comics, because when you mentioned Jack of all trades, you were also very good at your own art style and everything. Now, I believe this I believe this resonated all the way back to when, like, you were at a young age when you began, like, as people were when you were growing up, you doodle and everything, and basically have your own imagination of what you want and everything, and just draw it down.
That's funny, because I actually could not draw myself out of a wet paper bag until I was around 16 or 17. That's when I sat down and said, you know what, I'm going to learn drawing. So I started looking at tutorials online and browsing DeviantArt and stuff, trying to find inspiration for art and tutorials to learn. And then eventually, over the years, I managed to improve into a somewhat decent artist. So I didn't have the talent or the natural ability for it. But I'm still pretty happy with what I'm doing, but I can still improve. And I will be working on that in the next few years. It's never too late to improve.
And the thing about it is, your art style, I've seen your webcomics and everything of it, especially like different drawings of what you draw on hand, including making your own, like, it could be thumbnails or anything in general. I was going to say, with those or so, it has a unique style to it. And that's a key thing that I want you to take in. Yeah, that's a key thing I want you to take in, because it's a unique style. It's one of a kind. No one else can replicate that. Only you. And that's what makes it a lot better for you yourself, because nobody else can basically make that kind of style that you do.
It's a weird Frankenstein style of anime and Western influences. And it's still quite a bit stuffed. I'm aware of it, but it still allows me to communicate my ideas in a way I found suitable to my purposes. And yes, I do like making comics. However, I've been busy with other projects these last few months, and I've not been able to do them as often as I used to.
That's all good.
Which is kind of a shame, now I think about it.
That's all good. I guarantee you on hand, you'll definitely come back around. It's just a matter of time management, which sometimes time management can be quite a problem on hand, especially when you got so many other things you got to take care of too, here and there. So, the thing I would ask you to on hand following that is basically any old VRC memories that come to your mind, like back when you first started to where we are now. Anything sticks out to you?
That's a great question. I think my most favorite points were always the New Year's Eve parties, where we all got together and jumped around a lot of different instances to hang out with friends and reminisce about the year that just passed us by. Also, hold on, before I forget.
Yeah, go ahead.
I totally blanked on that thing. Hold on.
Hey, you're fine.
I really wanted to host your stream, but I blanked on it.
Now
I'm going to go fix it now.
That's okay. It's all good on hand. I will say that would actually be a nice thing to do on hand. Like, I know for a fact this year has been terrible for the most part, but it might be a good idea just basically have like this small instance on hand just to reminisce some of the good times we kind of had for this year or so. Some of them good times. Just to be able to at least be in a room with all the people we've known that are still around. So, that'd be a nice thing to send out on hand, at best. So
yeah. It's going to be a busy day because I have the big Vtuber New Year's Eve party organized by the Vtuber community. The Vtuber committee, sorry.
No, you're good.
Words are hard sometimes, but yeah. That's going to be fun to hop around a few places and catch up with people that don't normally log in too often these days. Because that's normally when they come back. It's on those type of events. But still, it's not going to be my last New Year's event. Because I'm here for the long haul. I love VRChat. I love the VRChat community. I love VRChat as well, but we all know that if something better comes along, people will move platforms over the years. But the people will stay the same. If that makes any sense.
No, it makes sense. Makes sense on hand. Plus only...
Because we do know there's a competition.
Yeah.
With VRChat. And this is the only way to move forward. Because it can't be only VRChat.
Yeah.
Because that's how they become complacent. And sit on their laurels. And nothing gets done.
And if they don't have competition on hand, they won't be able to basically kick it up a notch to be able to be like, okay, we need to get this done or so, otherwise we're going to basically lose a player base on hand for basically towards the other people on hand. Be like, it could be Neos VR, Chill Out VR, any other competition.
Yeah.
Or like some of the stealth ones out there that we don't even know about until they show up and be like, wait, where do they come from? So.
But yeah, what I'm meaning is that if they don't do the things that the community asks of them, and they don't take us seriously, there are always alternatives we can go to.
Yeah.
And that's good too, because as I said, we are a fan of social VR as a whole, as a genre. We can always move around. But still, VRChat for now remains my favorite incarnation of social VR. And I do hope they'll make it the best it can be.
Oh yeah.
Before it's too late.
I'm hoping so too, but like I said, I feel like with competition on hand, it'll definitely kind of like make them at least understand better what they need to do. But speaking of VRChat, let me talk about the current present of VRChat right now. From when you first started, I believe 2018 or so, or 2018 or so, to where we are now in 2020.
Yeah, January 2018 to December 2020.
Yep. From there to now or so, what are some of the things you wish would have stayed during that period from when you first started to here? And what are some of the things you're glad that had basically gone away for the most part? It could be from a technical point, it could be from basically a nostalgia point.
Well, I do miss public lobbies quite a bit. They have become quite scary to be in.
Yeah.
Which I fear is an existential threat to VRChat itself. Because if they don't have new players coming in, because of the horrible new player experience, just look, you can't have a sustainable game if all your new players get scared off by tiny Yodas yelling the N-word in public lobbies. It's not ideal. And it's not good because the only way for those new people to get out of that is to make friends with enough good people to go into Friends Plus and never return. And it sucks because it makes it harder to meet new people. Every time I still try to go to public lobbies, but I keep getting trashed or run into very toxic people. And since I have a bit of a polarizing voice, they never have good things to say about it. I mean, the trolls. So it kind of sucks.
Yeah.
And I do want to meet new people. So it's hard.
Yeah.
And I feel like they could probably be doing a better job of enforcing the rules.
Yeah, I wish that would be a case on hand, especially like security-wise or so for it. And the thing, too, that makes it harder for, like, new players in general is the fact that once your first experience in VRC has been tarnished or so, it's hard to come back for the most part because you're thinking it's going to happen again. It's the exact same equivalent with those who basically have already been established in VRC and basically have been around for a long period, and basically with public lobbies. Like, once you've basically have your first bad experience, well, not first bad experience, but basically constant bad experiences on hand, like in public worlds, basically you turn public worlds into a no man's land. Like, you're afraid to go there just because you have no idea if somebody's gonna, like they could have seen your name from somewhere else and immediately crash you, or basically you could easily be, like, I don't know, recognized, or basically you become like the easy random target out of the bunch to basically go after.
Yeah. Your reputation precedes you, and even if it's not the people there, they tell their friends, oh shit, it's that person, that streamer. And then everybody floods in, and then it gets ridiculous.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure how the bigger streamers do it when they hop into VRChat. I'm guessing that's why they stick to Invite Plus, and sometimes Friends Plus. It's fully understandable, because otherwise they're just surrounded by people. And even if they have the nicest of intentions, sometimes it just gets overwhelming.
Yeah.
In a way.
A little bit of a paranoia on hand, like you have no idea if they're really being nice to you, or basically they're actually being nice to you. It's just your own conscience gets the better of you because you have no idea if they're going to do something. And that's the worst part entirely.
I don't really think about that. The thing about a lot of big crowds is that even if there's some people with ill intent in it. It's a waste of mental space to think about them. Because the worst they can do is rush you or call you bad names. And since I stopped doing VRChat a long time ago, it hasn't been too much of an issue for me, because even if they start doing the toxic shit, I just like silently block them and move on with my life. That's why it's probably a bit more stressful for you since you stream VRChat, that you never know when some chucklehead is going to drop by and force you to delete a VOD.
I don't really have to worry too much.
Although, I do have a question for you on that one.
Sure, go ahead.
How often does this happen to you?
How often does this happen to me?
You have to delete a VOD because of shenanigans.
To be honest with you, not too much, and I'll tell you why. It's because nowadays or so, when I do stream VRChat, it's mostly for interviews that we are having, as well as basically just like maybe an RP for my friends' RPs entirely. But when it comes to like like friends and guests or so, say if I was looking around like VCap or so, and a friends and guests or so, I don't have to worry too much about anything, just because people can join, but I'm not too worried about like a random person I don't know to pop in and do something. Like, it rarely happens. The only time it would probably happen is if I go into a public world. Now, this is where the whole paranoia thing comes into play, because again, it's like you go into a world, you're not familiar with anybody in that world, so you have no idea what their intentions are. They could be good intentions, they could be bad intentions, but you don't want to risk it. Especially if you just want to...
You're rolling the dice.
Yeah, you're rolling the dice on hand.
It's like Russian roulette, but with profanity.
Yep.
And sometimes you'll go into a lobby and it's going to be fine, and you'll make some new friends that look pretty awesome. Are pretty nice. And then the next time you hop in and it's like a literal wall of bullshit.
And past that entirely on hand for me, I just basically, like, if I'm not streaming VRChat or so, basically I would be in like a friends and guests, just hanging out with people, world exploring or so. Sometimes if we wanted to, we could definitely go into a public world and just basically mess around there for whatever kind of small shenanigan we had an idea wise or so. Nothing too harmful, but basically like something just basically interesting wise or so. But that only rarely happens. So that's the thing about publics. It's like when you have an idea for what you want to do, it can rarely happen just because you have no idea what the atmosphere is going to be. And again, it's not VR. I wouldn't say it's the game's fault entirely. It's just a matter of the people that come in. Because keep in mind, there's people that come from like different other communities on hand. Some of them come from communities that you don't normally think they would come from until they pop in here just for basically the, shits and giggles. For them mostly.
Yeah, I mean, VRChat can't be blamed for that, although they could be doing a better job of enforcing the rules in that regard.
Yeah.
We're responding to reports and evidence in a way that makes a difference. So if you get crashed, then you have video proof of it and the logs and everything. That person should get the fuck out.
So yeah. Like I said...
because otherwise they'll come back and they'll just do it again.
And again, it's just...
there's no consequences.
Well, the consequences to this is, yeah, you can ban their account, but considering the fact it's not like an IP ban or so, they can easily create a new account and just get back in. And there's a
Yeah, but it's a bother afterwards.
Yeah, it is. Definitely a bother afterwards on hand. But to kind of move on or so, anything you're looking forward towards, past this year, or basically anything you got planned for you for the most part?
Well, I'm looking forward to the coronavirus vaccine, so we can go back to a semblance of normalcy.
Yeah, that too.
That's the big one. Although I'm a realist, I'm sure I will not be getting my vaccine until the end of 2021, because more vulnerable people will be getting it first, and that's okay too. We just have to be patient and keep being careful, because there's light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah.
We have to go towards it.
Oh, yeah.
And hope for the best.
And not only that...
And stay safe and keep people around us safe.
Yeah, that too. I was about to say, not only that, just basically be courteous and just kind of like just wear a face mask around those you have for the most part, especially while going to public or work-wise. So,
if there's a silver lining to all this shit, is that now when people are sick of anything really, they'll have the common decency of wearing a mask now. At least I do freaking hope so.
I hope so too.
Because back before this whole thing started, you had some people sick in the public transit, coughing your lung out, not even coughing in the crook of their arm or in with their mouth, just openly coughing in front of them. So how many times I got sick because of some of these chuckleheads? I try to be careful, but you can't go around someone coughing in enclosed spaces. So that's why I'm hoping the habit of wearing a mask when you're symptomatic will become something of a custom here.
Yeah.
Like it is currently in Asian countries, where if you're sick, you wear the mask to protect others. Which is what this whole thing is here as well right now.
Yeah, and kind of
We're wearing the mask not to save ourselves. We're wearing it to save others, hoping the other is wearing the mask to save us from them as well. Return the favor. But there's quite a few people who think that putting a thin piece of fabric over their face is some kind of
gag.
affront. I don't understand this weird human reaction.
I don't know either. It's just
like, it's fabric. It's not going to kill you.
Yeah, I know. It's weird on hand too, because the thing that people don't seem to understand it too is when you wear a cloth mask or so, you're not gagging yourself. You're not basically limiting yourself to breathe. It's basically to limit the amount of whatever is going to be airborne. Because when you have somebody airborne or anything, it can go anywhere. Even if basically you're protected, you keep everything sterile and everything, it can somehow end up in your household when you least expect it. You don't know where it came from, but you know it was in the air. So, it's like...
Well, it depends on how you... There's always measures you can take. Which is, by example, when people deliver things to your house. You answer the door and tell them to put it in front. I live in an apartment with a staircase. So when I buzz in someone, they're downstairs looking up at me, and I tell them leave things on the stairs. And since I already paid and gave them the tip with my credit card, they'll have to come up. I don't have to sign anything.
Yep.
Because the main way that this thing travels is from person to person directly.
Okay.
So the farthest away you are from someone, the better. And if they're wearing a mask, that's even better because it reduces the, if we want to use nerd terms, the AOE effect of their breath. So it's still going forward. But instead of going 6 feet, because the mask is just flowing down enough to hit the floor instead. Which dramatically reduces the chance of that shit getting on you. Or on a part of you that will afterwards end up on your face.
Yeah.
So that's the main way the infection spreads. Although I know that the virus on surfaces is also another possible vector. But it's a much less risky one. I'll still disinfect shit that I have to use right away. If it's in a package. If it's organic stuff, I just don't bother eating it.
Yeah.
Because that's just going to make the food unusable. But if it's, for example, a package, if I know I'm going to use it in the next day, I use Lysol wipes on top of the package to make it safe.
Yeah, I get you.
And then afterwards I'm good. And if something is not going to be used in the next 3 days or more, I put it in the side of my room. In my apartment, in a special room I keep for that stuff. And once 3 days are over, I can use it normally because that's the amount of time, generally speaking, that the virus remains effective on most surfaces. In some rare cases, it can go up to 7 days. And it can even be less than 3 days. But 3 days is a good safe line. So for example, if I buy some bag of chips, I just chuck them in the corner for 2 or 3 days and then I can consume them without using disinfectant on it. I'm taking probably a lot more precautions.
No, I got you.
Because I've always been kind of a germaphobe. And I mean, I was training out for this my whole fucking life. But all joking aside, I notice I don't have a lot of risk factors because I get to work from home in my life, in my day job. For those of you who are not aware, I am an administrative assistant for a law firm. and we get to work from home. So I don't really go out much, and I can stay safer than most. But I'm still taking additional precautions, because my objective is to make it to the vaccine in one piece. Because that's something people don't. Yeah, go ahead.
No. I just no. You're good. I just immediately had the idea on hand. The fact that you mentioned law firm is like immediately what popped in my head is Jeffy Wright, Ace Attorney. It's like just that popped up in my head. It's like I'm surprised nobody has made like at least in your community like jokes about not like jokes, but basically like references or basically just kind of like give you like your own objection, kind of like alien style text for you. There's a thought. But besides that, no, go ahead. Sorry.
It's I can understand, although I'm probably more of the administrative assistant is more or less what we used to call secretaries.
Mm-hmm.
It's the new term for them.
Okay.
So it's basically the janitors of the administrative world. You don't realize you need one until your whole office is a mess and nothing's running correctly.
So you get like stacks of papers high up on your desk, and it's like, well, these need to be filed.
Yeah, virtually speaking, things need to be filed in the correct place. Appointments must be made. Emails must be read and correctly forwarded, stuff like that. And a lot of letter writing. So some of my bosses will give me the gist of what they want me to do, or what to write. And I'll interpret it in my own way. And then they'll look at it and sign it. And we can send it to the clients. No, it's not the most interesting thing, but it's stable work. And I've been working at that place for almost 10 years now.
Yeah, there you go.
So it's a stable income that allows me to have fun with my own hobbies in my own time.
Yeah, and I will say, like, it's not like the hardest work ever. It's just basically time-consuming for the most part. It's just a matter of, like, just reading what you gotta do and just basically sending it its way, so.
I mean, sometimes it gets pretty complicated, especially in the field we are working in.
Mm-hmm.
But it's things you learn.
Yep.
And sometimes it gets stressful, but it's every job, right?
Yep.
We all have to deal with that stuff.
Yep. Well, we've got a curveball that comes our
way. But at the end
way.
of the day, we don't have to be too worried about our financial stability while we work on the actual things that interest us. So that was my solution. Because I could go full time all in right now. But I don't think I would have the support underneath to actually do it.
Mm-hmm.
So I prefer to just do it on my own time and not end up starving in an unheated apartment.
No.
So it's a balancing act.
Yeah, it is. Really is, for the most part, until you think you're ready on hand. And plus, it's one of those things where it's like, yeah, you can go full-time and you want to, but you'd rather have, like, a job on the side as well. Like, if you can bounce both ways. Because even though it's going to be hard to even do that for the most part or so, at least you have a guarantee that basically, if something goes wrong, you have something to at least fall back on. Or basically, there may be, like, life throws a curveball your way. It's going to throw something your way, you at least expect it, and basically it's a matter of, like, well, at least I can count what I have right now just to be able, at least, as a backup in case anything happens,
Yeah. Although, as I say, if I ever decide to go full-time, it's not like I throw away my diploma and light it on fire.
Yep.
So if this thing does not pan out, and I get close to running out of money, I can always find another job in that field, because that's the thing I like about administrative work. It's always needed.
Yep.
Even if it's not at my old job, I can still find work elsewhere.
And that
So I'm not too worried.
And that you can count your blessings on, You got plenty of opportunities on hand for what you can do. So. But,
although it's going to be weird trying to find work now, considering the last time I applied for a job was over a decade ago.
Last time I applied for a job was like...
Things changed.
Yeah, things definitely change. Things definitely change.
Now I hear you absolutely need to have a LinkedIn account, which was not the case back then. You could actually go physically over to people and give them your physical copy of your resume. Now you have to email that stuff, and they're free to disregard it if you don't meet one of their arbitrary requirements.
What makes it harder about that is too, they can easily disregard it or basically be like, you could put it in there and somehow it gets lost in the shuffle. And then you're waiting for a phone call. And it's like, well, anytime now. Unless I gotta call them like the third time in a row, so.
But yeah, so it's going to be another thing to get used to. Once I go back in the job market. If that ever becomes a situation, because I'm not going to make the full jump to full-time streaming until I know for a fact I can have some form of sustainable income from it. So I'm going to make sure all my ducks are in a row.
Yeah, pick your moment.
Before I ever consider doing that for real.
Yeah, just pick your moments when you yourself are ready. That's the thing.
Yeah.
So.
And that might be soon. That might be not soon enough. But still, I want to try it at least once, even if it's only for a year or two, and then I can say I gave it a shot and move on with my life.
Well, there you go. There you go on hand. And
I mean, you have similar objectives, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, the thing is, for my objectives on hand, now, I'm usually upfront about this on hand. You already know about my thing, but basically, my internet's not the strongest in the world when it comes to basically streaming. I say this now to you guys, to everybody watching right now, but basically, for you already know on hand, it's not like 720, 60 FPS or anything like that entirely. It's just basically, I work with what I got. And as you can see, with working with what you got, it got me this far. So literally, it's like, even if I get it on hand or so, even if I don't, I'm still working with what I can. So, but if I can get past that hump or so, I might be able to do a little bit more than what I'm limited to. But past that or so,
Also, it's all about perspective.
Yeah.
Because we don't realize how much progress we've actually made until we look back on where we were last year or 2 years ago. And seeing also because, we've had this talk before, off stream.
Yeah, we have.
Where more than half of Twitch streamers stream to less than 5 average viewers. We're talking in the millions of affiliated streamers working. So if you manage to get more than 5, you're already better off than half of all streamers.
Oh yeah, it's one of those things too where usually I don't kind of keep track of how many people are watching, and mostly because of the fact that if you keep track of how many people you're watching, so it's going to get to your head. Where basically be it's like a graph, or people watching Wall Street or something, where basically they constantly, look at the numbers going up and down, up and down. It's like an emotional roller coaster ride, and they can't seem to get it out of their head to be like, it happens all the time. So.
It's valuable information, though. But the thing is, you have to... What I do is when I look on the dashboard when I'm streaming, I click it off so I don't see it unless I mouse over it. So the way it goes, instead of always looking at it, what I like to do is I look at it maybe once an hour or once every 2 hours.
Yep.
Just so I get a general idea of if what I'm currently doing is working or not. Because I don't see it as a way to overanalyze that, oh no, I don't have people or I have too many, what's happening.
Yep.
It's a good way to see if what you're doing is working or not. But if you see it as a way to grow or not, that's not the time or place for that kind of thought pattern while you're streaming.
Yeah.
So that's why you should use it, but only to figure out if what you're doing is working better or worse than usual. That's it. So always base yourself off your usual metrics. Not trying to always think about why is it not increasing or decreasing. Just to see if what you're doing is working or not. I think that's a good compromise.
Yeah, I got you. It's a good compromise on hand. And I'll definitely kind of keep an eye on it for that kind of reason for the most part. And I mean, I could just say for the most part, I know I've changed from a year or so in the sense of basically getting an idea of what I can do and work with what I can. So it is what it is. It is what it is, and you learn as you go along. That's the key thing. Learn as you go along, and you begin to learn a little bit more.
And that's the thing. Once again, you don't realize how much you've grown as a streamer until you sit down and watch your older VOD from a year or 2 years ago. I did that experiment a few weeks ago, and I was like, holy Christ. A lot of things have changed. And I honestly like to think for the better. Like, for example, I talk more quickly than I used to. And I'm a bit faster on my feet. Because I'm getting more used to speaking in this language. Which helps me in the long term. But I mean, most people know I'm not a native English speaker.
Yep.
Which fits with the character, because, I mean, I'm natively French, Canadian. So, my difficulties with the English language adds the character by accident. Well, more so. Because, I mean, I still add a little flair to my voice when I use the voice changer.
Yeah.
I don't normally talk this way. But, still, it's still an extension of who I am as a person, which I think is a good compromise, because I know some people like to play very different roles than what they actually are when they're streaming. But that's not me. I'm not that good of a role player in the first place. And I prefer to be authentic, as funny as that might sound coming from an alien. This is pretty much who I am in real life.
Yep.
If you take off the voice and the affectation to it. So I just add a little bit of flourish on top of it. Most of the information that I speak about on stream of what I did and what I'm doing with my life are all real.
Yeah.
It's all based on me. I find it easier to keep up with, and I think that people find this a bit more genuine.
They're able to relate to you on a human standpoint.
Yeah, because it's the real thing, but only with a little bit of added flourish to it.
Well,
So I think that comes across as you say.
yeah. And the thing, too, I will say, and the key thing that I will say for the most part is if you can get people to relate to you on a human standpoint, they're never going to basically look at you as, like, you know, the streamer persona or anything. They're going to look at you as you more than anything else in the world. And that's actually a very cherishable bond, because that means if you're going for a rough time on hand or so, they know you. Or basically, if you're going for, like, the happiest moment of time, they will know you from basically how you feel, how you talk, how you act. They'll know you by your personality more than anything else. And that is key and genuine on hand for more than anything else, like you said. And
Yeah.
so it just
And
helps.
don't get me wrong, it's fine if people have different streaming personalities. That's okay too. Because at the end of the day, streaming is a lot of different things to different people. For some, it's a big bombastic show, larger than life personalities, doing outrageous things. And for others, it's more of a down to earth, pun intended, way of connecting with people. So it's different things, and that's okay too, because we all have our audiences, and that's how we connect with them. Some do it differently, and that's okay too.
Yeah.
And for me, as I said, I prefer to stay more real to myself, because as we've previously discussed. But this allows me also to express a part of me I don't get to normally express in the real world, which is an extension of my personality that does not shine as much as it should.
Yeah.
You know, because of real world limitations.
Oh yeah, definitely.
And it's a facet of me I'm happy to show to people here.
Definitely.
And it allows me, it's a balancing thing. It's two sides of my life that come together to make a whole. W-H-O-L-E, not H-O-L-E.
Gotcha. Got you on hand.
Yeah.
Couldn't have said it better. And question I had added up on hand here, which is basically going to be that curveball question, because everybody's going to have a different answer to this, is let's talk about anime real quick.
Boy, you're going to be disappointed.
Well, like I said, everybody's going to have a different answer on hand. So when I say anime and everything, what's the first series that pops to your mind?
Well, I don't watch a lot of anime.
No, I got you.
So the only series that comes to mind is one of the few I definitely watched, which was Death Note.
Ah, Death Note. I hope it wasn't it wasn't a Netflix film adaptation.
Oh dear God, no.
Okay, make it sure.
Although I did watch it.
Oh God.
Because one of my friends wanted to because one of my friends said, "Oh, I would like to watch it because if it's good, I might think into watching the anime or read the manga." And I said, "For the love of Christ, read or watch the anime version because that didn't look good." Oh well, so we watched it. I cringed all the way through. I mean, they had some good ideas in there, but some others were, what's the polite way to say it? No, I can't. It was a clusterfuck.
That's fine. I mean, I call that brutal honesty more than anything else. If it basically say it as you want it.
Yeah.
So.
Although what's his name? The actor who was doing the voice of the Shinigami of Ryu.
I'm trying to think here.
What's his name? Fuck.
I could be wrong when I say this. It might have been William Dafoe, but I may be wrong with that one.
Yeah,
it is. It is.
It's him.
Okay.
Yeah, he did a great job of it. Yeah. So, at the end of the day, there were some redeeming parts of it.
Yep.
But still, the anime was better. And, yeah, I mean, that's one thing that remains stuck in my brain. Although there's another one that gets stuck in my brain as well. But that was not an anime, that was a graphic novel. I mean, no. Visual novel is the exact term, is it? You've heard about Steins Gate.
Yeah, I have. I haven't watched it, but I know about it.
I mean, I've played the visual novel all the way through. I mean, both of them. There's two. And holy crap. It's funny to say, but I think that was the best way of explaining. I mean, I know some people talk about it's a time travel story.
Yep.
So some people have preferences in the rules of their time travel, but I feel like the one that nails it the best is Steins Gate. It's such a great time travel story, and it pulls at your heartstrings, and it's funny, although since it's anime, there's a few things in there that are tone deaf or clumsily handled. Like, there's some things in anime I always found a bit weird. Like the excessive groping.
Oh, yeah.
There's some type of physical comedy that sometimes borderline on the...
Yeah. Risque to, like...
People who've seen or played Steins Gate will know what I'm talking about when I say that. I'm not going to go into detail because, Moncat US.
Yeah, you're fine. You're all good.
Well, okay, maybe I can put it in there. Oh, wait, I don't want to spoil it. But long story short, there's a character in there that presents as female but is actually male. And because of time travel shenanigans, that is no longer the case. But the main character doesn't believe it happened. So they test it out. By,
Yeah,
which is fucking horrible.
Yeah.
And he gets the shit kicked out of him afterwards, so, I mean, consequences, yes.
Yeah.
But still, there's a few things about anime that don't really translate well over Western audience.
Yeah.
And that's one of these things.
Yeah, because it's kind of like normalized in Japan for how it is or so. Like, for some reason, like, it could be normalized where basically Japan could just see... Anybody who lives in Japan could see and just be like, it'd be like, part of the story or something, and basically
just normal.
Just normal it,
We see it and go, oh god. But at the end of the day, if you take out that specific part, it's a pretty good story.
Good story.
All things considered. But yeah, there's a lot of roller coasters to it, but I recommend it all the same.
Okay. I will ask you this too, in the follow-up of that, basically, what would be your favorite series, like, in anime, that would come to your mind or so?
You mean all genres confounded?
Or basically be like...
Not only anime, because I'm more of a Western type of animation / sitcom.
I mean...
Sitcoms are more my jam.
Okay, I got you. I mean, well, I could switch it around, be like, what would be your favorite kind of like Western kind of like sitcoms on it? I swear to God, I bet you it's going to be Whose Line Is It Anyway, isn't it?
I mean, that's not a sitcom, that's an entertainment show.
Oh, entertainment show,
like
my
a
bad.
variety show in a way.
Okay.
But I still agree that it's probably one of the best of its kind. You can't beat Whose Line Is It Anyway?
Oh yeah.
The way things are improvised on that show is incredibly funny. But if I would have to pick a sitcom that I still watch to this day from time to time,
Mm-hmm.
it's going to pretty much date me immediately. But Seinfeld.
Seinfeld.
It's an old show.
Yeah,
It ended in the middle of I think it ended in 1999. 1999.
I remember on
So
hand.
it's been over 20.
Yeah, it's been over 20 years. I actually remember that on hand. And of course, I can't tell you how many times I've seen like the Seinfeld theme basically memed or basically changed into like a weird beat for like certain remix songs
I mean,
on
that's
YouTube.
what it is these days.
That's what it is.
That's what it is mostly these days. It's people learn about Seinfeld not because they watched it, because they heard the memes of the song, or because some people like to use GIFs of it. Because it was a very, there was a lot of slapsticks at certain points, and those turned into memes, into GIFs that get used.
Yep.
Like, for example, one of the characters, Kramer, is a tall and lanky dude with puffy hair.
Mhm.
And there's a ton of GIFs of him on social medias. I mean, not as much as it used to be, but still,
Yep.
people still talk about it in that regard. But it was a pretty groundbreaking show, even to this day, because it's one of the first shows that was about totally nothing. Just people living their life, and they turn really things that could not be a problem into big episode-spanning adventures.
Mhm.
Like, oh, that person said something they shouldn't have, and then, like, for example, because all the main characters are horrible people.
Yeah.
And it was like, most people of that kind of show, or that are fans of that type of humor, will probably know a bit better shows like Curb Your Enthusiasm, or It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, which are both shows heavily inspired by
Yeah.
Seinfeld,
Yeah, it is.
where horrible people get stuck into funny situations because they're horrible people.
Oh yeah.
And, like, for example, one of the episodes, George, one of the main characters, is at a meeting at his office.
Mhm.
And someone, because they're eating while talking, and one of the people over there says, "Hey, George, the ocean called. They want their shrimps back."
Yep.
Because he's eating too much shrimps.
Mhm.
And then he's embarrassed as fuck, and then he leaves. And when he's in the car driving back home, he thinks of the perfect comeback. But instead of just going, "Oh well," and moving on, he engineers a super complicated situation for him to hand back in that very same situation, which is very difficult. And then he gets to do the comeback, and it blows up in his face spectacularly. And that's how the show ends,
Well, there you go.
that episode. So, yeah, it's a weird kind of show, but I still think it holds up today.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I know about it on hand. I never got a chance to watch too many of it, but I have seen like interesting clips of it here and there. Especially be it memed wise or basically have like a comedian do like voice impressions of it, like Frank Caliendo from Mad TV. Basically just doing like different voice impressions for it here and there. And yeah, of course we also had like our favorite soup chef saying "no soup for you." That too.
Oh, yeah. Did you know it was in the news recently?
Really?
Yeah, alright, so it recently came out how much money some actors were getting paid on Cameo
Mhm.
to reprise their role for voice lines.
Mhm.
Like, for example, Kevin from The Office.
Yep.
We all know Kevin.
Yes, we did.
Apparently, the actor behind him makes millions of dollars on Cameo, reprising his role for little voice lines on voicemails and stuff, you know, where they pay money to him
Mhm.
so he can talk to someone as a shout out. There's a lot of money in celebrities for that these days.
Mhm.
He was making a ludicrous amount of money. And the article also said how much money the Soup Nazi was making.
Oh boy.
6 figures.
6 figures.
And he got really mad at the journalist because he said, "Ever since you published that story, I have a ton of people in my family and others calling me for money."
Good God. That could happen on hand,
Because
especially.
that's the downside of being rich. it can happen.
Yeah, it can happen on hand, especially in the weirdest part of where we are year-wise or so, where basically, you know, people need like certain stuff like that on hand, money-wise or so. And
But that's the thing, even if you're rich, if you say yes to everyone because you don't want to look like an asshole,
yeah,
then you end up with no money.
Mhm.
That kind of defeats the purpose, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. It does on hand, especially when, you know, you, depending on what you did or so to kind of get that fortune on hand. For the most part, it's just kind of like, yeah, you want to look out for everybody, but at the same time or so, you want to make sure you at least keep a roof over your head, because you never know what could happen.
Yeah, because the world is full of stories of people who got rich quick and ended up either dead or destitute because they could not handle the pressure of it.
Yeah.
Either way too many people were coming asking for money, or they were irresponsible with it,
Mhm.
or they got into a huge gambling or drug addiction. Because it's like anything else, really. If it happens too fast and you're not used to it, it can end badly for you. Same goes for fame as goes for money, so we can circle back to our previous topics.
Yep.
Hey, I did it.
Hey, there you go.
I made it make sense.
Well, I will say it kind of goes all the way back down to our final question on hand, and as you can see, I have this camera right here pointing, and I was going to say I'm going to give you the I'm going to give you the center floor to basically kind of look at that camera, and I was going to ask you the following question, that being, what are your goals and dreams? And at best, what is the best advice you can ever give to anybody? I'm going to basically back up. I'm going to let you have the floor if you want to move up a little bit. And,
okay, hold on.
there you go. You're good. Right there, and I'm going to back up for you.
So, alright. I mean, it's probably pretty corny, but my objective with this all content creation is to at least make a positive difference in the world. Where if I can brighten someone's day, at least one, and make it so that they don't feel sorry for themselves, at least for a little bit, this will all have been worth it. But I also want to, eventually, if the stars align, maybe be able to do this full time, so I can work on this instead of working for others. Because, I mean, I don't like my day job, but there's no money, there's not many people who do. It's an ends to a mean. And ideally, I would like to do content creation full time. And maybe I'll be lucky enough to be able to do it in the future. So I guess we'll see. And if there's one piece of advice I can give to anyone, is always look on the long term. Never get stuck in the short term. Because, I mean, I've talked about this with you.
Yeah.
The streaming thing, or content creation in general. There's so many people falling victim to the 9-month syndrome, where they start out with big ambition and big energy, and when they're not Shroud or Ninja by month 9, they lose all hope and give up. And then their schedule gets spotty. They stop streaming as often. They lose all momentum. And then they're stuck back to square one. It's a harsh lesson to learn. So hopefully I can prevent you from making those mistakes. We've all made them at some point in the past. Let's save you some time, okay? And that applies to everything in life. You don't become good at anything on day one. And if you are good on day one, you're kidding yourself. You don't realize how much work you still have to do. And that's probably the most dangerous thing you can make. Mistake you can make. Because if you don't realize that everybody when they start sucks, and continues sucking for a long time, even I'm sure I still suck from time to time. We're working on it. It's a process. But yeah, the people who don't think they have things to improve are usually the ones who have the most work to do.
Mhm.
If I can say that the most polite way possible. So let that be a lesson for you. Don't give up. As long as it's not putting your life in danger, of course. So if you want to be the best streamer and you don't eat and don't sleep and do ridiculous hours, you're not helping yourself. You're just going to crash and burn. and then you'll be once again back to square one. So, think of the long term. Your health, both mental and physical, should come first. But keep track of the long term. Think bigger. And, well, how do I end this? Oh yeah. It's a marathon, not a sprint. Please remember that. Thank you. And have a wonderful end of year.
Well, there you go. Yeah, you did good. Yeah, you did good on hand. And I will say too on hand, like, every bit of that is pretty much true in the sense, like, trust me, this is not a race. Like, everybody's gonna have their own, like, marathon. Everybody's got to have their own miles on hand for what they gotta do. Because everybody's life is different. Everybody's got a different adventure, different storybook. How you write that or so is based on what
things to work around.
Different things to work around, different obstacles on hand. Some people may have a hill to climb, some people might have a mountain to climb. All depends on where they are in life. And based on where they got to go. It just takes time for the most part. It takes time.
And it's useless to feel bitter about it. Because the thing is, I see a lot of people getting stuck in their heads about how much others are progressing. And it's wasted time. Yeah. Because they have not had the same circumstances as you. They have not had the same path as you. Everybody's path is different.
Yeah.
And as I said, success is not guaranteed. But we still have to work for it.
Yeah.
We all have our cross to bear. And it's those who don't give up who eventually make it.
So, before we call and everything, I want to ask everybody in chat, does anybody have any questions for Jeffy? Any questions on all you would like to ask him? I do say one thing on hand. It's not really a question, but I am basically just going to say this for the most part. I know for a fact that wherever you are in life, for the most part, Jeffy, you can at least got a lot of things to look back on. And that's the key thing. Hell, you got a lot of people that basically are right behind you every step of the way, no matter where you go. So that's the key thing. I'll let you know.
I have a lot of things to look back on. Are you implying I'm old?
No, I'm just saying from basically, like, career-wise or so, as you keep going.
I know, I'm messing with you.
I mean, I'm kind of catching up there anyways, so. But.
I mean, that's how I have to, because people normally don't know when I'm kidding.
Mm-hmm.
So the typing allows me to show them I'm joking.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, some people assume I'm always serious all the time, which is not the case.
Yeah.
I have a bit of a weird sense of humor, and it doesn't always come across.
I mean, it's the one kind of humor you have on hand, too. Like, that's what makes you distinguishable, too, especially for what people relate to you on hand. It could be, like, the driest humor on hand, people will at least be like, yep, that's our Jeffy, you know? Especially for those who are around you.
I've been told that before, yeah.
But hey, that's what makes you one of a kind in the eyes of everybody. So, all right. Well, I will say, since we don't seem to have any questions on hand for the most part, I'm gonna go ahead and say that will be episode 27 of Shoot the Breeze, pretty much the last interview of 2020. Thank you guys so much.